Welcome back to a new episode of Insects for Fun. I'm your host, Mitchell Logan, and today we are talking about two insects that I'm sure every single one of you has had a deeply personal and deeply unpleasant encounter with. That's right, today we're covering horseflies and deerflies, which is to say we are covering the family Tabanidae, the blood-sucking bullies of the insect world. Now, I know that some of you may be thinking, why would you dedicate an entire episode to the flies I hate most? And honestly, that's exactly why. These things are fascinating in the most diabolical way. And by the end of this episode, I think you'll have a whole new level of respect for something you've probably been swatting at most of your life. So, let's get into it. Tabanidae is the family name for horseflies, deerflies, and their relatives. And it is a big family. We're talking over 4,500 described species worldwide, making it one of the larger fly families out there. They're found on every continent except Antarctica, which honestly feels like this time Antarctica got a pass. Now, within this family, the two groups you're most likely to have beef with are Tabanus and Chrysops. Tabanus are true horseflies, which are generally the larger and tankier of the two. Some species are absolutely massive, reaching up to 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters in length. And it's these giant ones that will make a horse genuinely lose its mind. Chrysops are deerflies, which are a little smaller and sneakier, and honestly, in my opinion, more annoying because of it. These ones have these incredible patterned wings that look a little like stained glass windows. They're actually really nice looking if you're not being bitten by one. Both groups are true flies, meaning they're in the order Diptera, so they've got two wings, just like houseflies and mosquitoes. The name Tabanidae comes from the Latin tabanus, which means horsefly. There's no secret meaning or any cool Greek etymology to unpack this time. Latin people just saw a big fly biting a horse and called it what it was. And it may shock you, but horsefly does refer to the fact that horses are a primary target. These flies harass large mammals and have actually been documented reducing the productivity of livestock. Cows being chased around by flies actually gain less weight and produce less milk, which means farmers genuinely hate these things on an economic level, not just a vibes level. Deerfly are also self-explanatory in their naming because they love targeting deer and similar-sized animals. But don't for a second think that means they'll leave you alone. If you've ever been hiking in a wooded area near water in summer and had something relentlessly circle your head, that was probably a deerfly. Here's something that I think surprises a lot of people. Only the females bite. The males are actually completely harmless and spend their time feeding on nectar and pollen like a totally normal, well-adjusted insect. The reason is females need a blood meal to produce eggs. Same story as mosquitoes. The protein in blood is basically a superfood for egg development, which means the next time one of these things takes a chunk out of you, pat yourself on the back for being chosen as part of her reproductive strategy. Now, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on the spin, ctenobids do not have the same needle-like mouthparts as mosquitoes. These flies have scissor-like mouthparts called stylets, which they use to slash through your skin. This creates a wound with pooled blood for them to lap up. The scientific word, by the way, for pool feeding like this is called telmophagy, as opposed to the needle style called solenophagy. This is also why their bites hurt immediately and why they leave a bigger mark. You're actually being cut. For those that have been bit before, you also know full well how their bites actually draw blood visible on the surface of your skin. Some of the larger horsefly species, like Tabanus americanus in America and Tabanus sudeticus in Europe, can leave wounds serious enough to cause major distress in livestock. So, how do these things find us in the first place? Tabanids are actually really sophisticated hunters, and they use multiple senses at once. Carbon dioxide is a big one. Just like mosquitoes, they pick up on the CO2 we exhale and home in on it. But they also use ammonia, polarized light, movement, and colors. So let's unpack all of that, starting with ammonia. Tabanids are strongly attracted to ammonia, which wafts off animal urine and sweat. Together with CO2, it's a powerful 1-2 combination that signals large mammal nearby. Polarized light is pretty cool and doesn't get talked about a lot, but basically horseflies are polarotactic, meaning they're strongly attracted to linearly polarized light. Polarized light is sunlight reflected off of a dark, shiny surface, like the coat of a horse or a cow. Horseflies have evolved to use this as a long-range buffet signal, and it's also why they're so attracted to water, cars, and even solar panels, all of which reflect polarized light similarly to animal skin. Now, we've actually got these cool tools called black ball traps, which work on this principle. These are essentially large, dark, shiny spheres which sit in the sun, heat up, and reflect polarized light, luring flies in from a distance. Tabanids have enormous compound eyes that take up most of their head, and are incredibly good at detecting light as well as motion. This is actually why deerfly and horseflies will keep circling you no matter what you do. And even if you run, they still seem to find you, especially if you're wearing dark colors. Just like mosquitoes, dark colors attract them more than light ones. Research shows that horseflies are strongly attracted to dark blue and black, and much less attracted to white or striped patterns. This has led some scientists to theorize why zebras might have stripes. It's not that stripes deter flies from a distance, but that up close the alternating black and white pattern disrupts the fly's ability to slow down and land properly. They cannot find a landing zone between the disruption of polarized light. So maybe if we wear black and white striped clothing, that could give us a natural deterrent. As far as heat sensing goes, Tabanids can really only sense the warmth of a surface directly beneath them. They can't actually find heat from a distance. They also prefer sunlit warm hosts over animals in shade, because it keeps their bodies warm. Deerflies are a little different in that they prefer shaded habitats, and they also have a reputation for targeting the head specifically, and will circle relentlessly before landing. If you've ever had one buzzing around your ears for like 5 straight minutes on a trail, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, let's talk about the life cycle. Tabanids, like all flies, have a complete metamorphosis, and eggs are laid in clusters on vegetation overhanging water or wet soil. We're talking anywhere from 100 to over 1,000 eggs per cluster, depending on the species, all stacked in neat little rows. The female uses a secretion to harden them into a solid mass that looks like a tiny dark brown pine cone. Pretty neat looking actually, if you know what you're looking at. The larvae drop into the water or wet mud, and this is where things get pretty nuts. Tabanid larvae are predatory. These little guys will go hunt after earthworms, other insect larvae, and small invertebrates in the soil. They have hook-like mouth parts and are surprisingly aggressive hunters for something that's going to grow up into a fly. They go through anywhere from 6 to 13 larval instars depending on species, and the larval stage can last anywhere from 1 to 3 years. Yeah, this fly that ruined your camping trip spent up to 3 years hunting things in the mud before it started hunting you. Pupation happens in drier soil near the water's edge, and after a couple weeks, out comes an adult, ready to eat pollen, find a mate, or in the case of females, find the nearest large warm mammal. Adults are actually pretty short-lived. Most only survive a few weeks to a couple months. So that summer of horsefly misery is really just a brief window in a life that was mostly spent as a tiny aquatic predator. So if you want to avoid tabanids, avoid being near standing water, marshes, ponds, rivers, or any kind of wetland during summer. That's their breeding ground and their home turf. They love humid, warm conditions and are most active in the hottest parts of the day. We're talking mid-morning to mid-afternoon. Overcast days sometimes bring them out earlier and later since they're less tied to temperature spikes. Different species have slightly different habitat preferences. Some horsefly species love open fields and pastures. Deerflies tend to favor wooded areas near water. Some species are even coastal. But the common thread is always warmth, mammals, moisture. They're also incredibly localized. Unlike mosquitoes, which can travel long distances on wind, Tabanids tend to stay in a relatively tight range around their breeding sites. So if you camp near a boggy area, you've basically just moved into their apartment. Now you might be wondering if anything eats these things, and yes, absolutely. Birds love them, particularly swallows and purple martins, which are aerial hunters. Dragonflies are also serious Tabanid predators, which is one of the many reasons to love dragonflies. Spiders, robber flies, and some parasitic wasps will also take them out. Interestingly, Tabanids are also parasitized by fly larvae of the family Tachinidae, and also by some mites. So even the bully has bullies. As for why the fly hasn't developed some clever anti-predator strategy, honestly, they don't really need one. They're fast, they're large enough to be tough to catch, and they produce so many larvae that losing a percentage of the population to predators is just the cost of doing business. Okay, now we're going to talk about disease vectors. The part you didn't want to know, but you probably should. Tabanids are actually vectors for a handful of diseases and parasites, though thankfully most are not directly relevant to humans in most parts of the world. In horse and livestock management, they transmit horse infectious anemia, anaplasmosis, and various parasites. In parts of Central and West Africa, horseflies transmit loa loa, a parasitic nematode that infects humans and can actually migrate through eyes. Yeah, the parasite actually moves through your eye, which is wild. It's called loasis, and I'm gonna leave it there because this is not a medical podcast. In North America and Europe, the direct disease risk to humans from horseflies is pretty low, but they can mechanically transmit things like rabbit fever and anthrax by moving contaminated blood between hosts. The takeaway is, if you're in endemic areas for any of these conditions, the same precautions you'd take for mosquitoes apply for horseflies. Okay, let's lighten the mood, because we've earned it. Male Tabanids have what are called holoptic eyes, meaning their compound eyes meet at the top of their head and cover nearly their entire face. It's like having an eye helmet. And it gives them almost 360-degree vision, which they use to spot females in flight and intercept them in midair. Females have a small gap between their eyes called dicoptic eyes, so you can actually tell male from female just by looking at the top of their head. And when it comes to their pollination habits, even females can pollinate when not in search of a blood meal. In fact, some plants in tropical and subtropical regions are actually specifically pollinated by Tabanids alone, and wouldn't reproduce without them. Alright, I have one more thing for you. Remember earlier in the episode when I mentioned black ball traps? Well, these are also called Manitoba traps, because they were invented at the University of Manitoba, Canada, to control horsefly populations. However, nowadays, they're also used as a survey technique because of how good they are at luring them in. The dark orb mimics a large, dark moving animal and lures the flies into a container. Some of these traps can catch thousands of flies in a single day, which is really incredible. And with that, we're going to end this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it as always, and please make sure to rate the show 5 stars on whatever platform you listen if you haven't already. And of course, if you would like more things, you can check the Patreon, which is patreon.com/insectsforfun. You can get ad-free episodes, bonus episodes, and vlogs. The warmer months are going to be coming real soon, and I'm moving back to America, so I'll start breeding a lot of the things that I used to breed And I am going to make eggs and stuff available on Patreon as well for those that are interested. Anyway, thanks again for listening. And catch me again next week.